Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by Mike Smith, award-winning director Brian Redondo, and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. I'm excited for today's show because we're going to talk about our reactions to the first 2 episodes of Jersey City's own hero, Ms. Marvel. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Welcome back to another show, Confidently Wrong. Look, we got the whole team together, y'all. What's up, Mike?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm back, baby.
Go, go, Power Ranger!
Thank you for gracing us with your presence.
Mm-hmm.
What do we owe the honor?
My life, becoming back to normal. We picked a wedding venue in the house.
Hey.
COVID is gone. I'm a normal person again. I'm back, baby.
Nice,
The Green
bro.
Ranger is back.
Make
What's up, Tommy?
Confidently Wrong great again.
Yo, when you're wedding, don't do that. When you're wedding again?
October 2023. So,
Mark it on your
Oh,
calendars,
thank God. Next year,
folks.
so a whole year and a half from now.
a whole other school
Okay,
year.
cool. Okay, so I got some time to get my money right and get my ticket to head. 'Cause, inflation is
Inflation
absolutely
is
stomping
crazy.
me out right
yeah,
now,
so
bro.
this is actually, so for our listeners, we were bought by NPR, so this is now a finance podcast.
Oh, well, I had a nice run, yo.
I think we should calm our voices down then.
Crypto.
I don't know. It could be like Kairos doll energy, like a little chaotic.
All right, let's get into it. This first show, we're going to talk about Ms. Marvel dropping on Disney+. We've seen episodes 1 and 2 up to this point. We'll do a quick little premise, and then after that, the spoilers are on. So if you haven't seen episodes 1 and 2, I'd say listen to Brian's little ditty here, and then pause it, go watch the first 2 episodes, and then come back and listen. Or if you don't care about spoilers, listen straight through. Brian, this is an MCU show that takes place in Jersey, the Dirty Jers. We have to get the show set up then from our good New Jersey native himself. Brian, what is the premise of the show?
I am the resident New Jersey native, though I'm no longer a resident of Jersey. I normally tell people I'm
But
semi-native New Yorker and never reveal the Jersey part. However, Ms. Marvel is actually bringing out the Jersey pride. Garden State stand up. Though technically WandaVision also took place in a fictional place in Jersey. But we're going to forget about that because
That was the burbs.
That was
Yeah.
the burbs. That was like Pleasantville, Jersey. This time we are in the one and only Jersey City. JC,
Wait, can I
what
ask-
up? The 201.
Can I ask one question?
Just
Ask
one.
it.
Okay, keep it to one.
Okay. And it's not Savon, what is your conceptual difference between New Jersey and New York?
Oh, wow.
Dude, you want me to really be honest with you, dude?
Because I
As a southerner, the
Yeah,
Northeast
exactly.
and the
It's
original
all
like
one
13
thing.
colonies is
It's
all
all
one
one.
thing, bro. There's no distinction. If you say you are from Connecticut, New York, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, whatever, that doesn't mean anything to me.
I think
Like,
one of
it
my
all
best
means the same thing.
One of
Jersey
my-
is very
Pennsylvania,
different than
yeah.
those other ones, though.
one
It
of
all
my
feels like
best
just one
friends
blurb of Northeast.
who is from Baton Rouge, who's been one of my closest friends for like 10 years, literally thought I was from New Jersey until like last month.
I
And
believe it.
I don't think the new knowledge has actually really changed anything, schema-wise in his head. I think I'm still just from, the scary place up north.
Well,
Yeah.
here's
You're
the
just
thing.
from the
you
13. I
guys-
just call you from the 13 colony. I just see y'all like the coloners. Y'all from the 13.
Yeah.
Y'all they just in that little Northeast blob where each state is the size of a city, and they just act like, okay, I guess this is worth being its own entire municipal government and thing. Sure, why not?
As long as they're not derisively calling you Yankees, I think we're fine. Because actually,
I do get that. I definitely
this
get that.
perception, Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island, New York City. I mean, in a way, they all are the same.
I
It's
know.
the greater. It's the greater New York tri-state area, as they call it. It's the expanse of the New York City metropolis. It radiates out into these different areas, and they all kind of got the same vibe. Jersey and Long Island, Mike. Maybe not too big of a drop off.
Two of the worst places in the entire world.
I'm not arguing with you about that.
I know you wouldn't. Nobody from there would.
It's the reason y'all all have the worst fan bases because y'all really all are just the same person, but in slightly different places.
Yeah, it's a slight change in accent.
I think
sports
Boston.
team.
I think like New England in the tri-state area, that might be conceptually different in a more palpable way than.
Yeah,
but
they're
like
way more
within
racist.
New York, yeah, well, yeah. So, but anyway, I was just interested because you were conflating the two, and we know our Southern friends.
So now our listeners understand the premise of Marvel, Ms. Marvel,
and
regional
and regional
for the spoilers.
sociogeography. Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing: Ms. Marvel takes place in Jersey City, which. For you, Savon, is slightly different from New York City. It is directly across the Hudson River. Ms. Marvel sits on a rooftop gazing at the New York City skyline that is just outside of her reach. So that gives you a little bit of the nuance that you're getting from Jersey City folks, right? It's still
They all
urban,
want to be in New
but
York.
They're kind of removed.
can't afford it though.
They're removed from Manhattan, exactly. And that's, that goes for people in the outer boroughs too, Brooklyn and Queens, right? Like
For sure.
it's kind of like same mentality, right? These are more working class folks who are looking up at the big skyscrapers. And so Jersey City is okay. Savon's doing his is that your uppity mocking gesture?
No, but I'm here. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Keep going. I'm learning.
I mean, these are just facts, man.
No, spit, bro. I'm not arguing. Keep going.
This is how New York City works. So Jersey City, which I used to live in Jersey City for a year. My auntie used to live in Jersey City, and we're always there all the time. What makes it interesting is that it is a very densely populated hub for Filipino and South Asian immigrant communities, which brings us to Kamala Khan, the protagonist of Ms. Marvel. She's a 16-year-old Pakistani American. She's this aimless teen that is just daydreaming about the Avengers and Captain Marvel because she exists within the MCU, right? And so she's just like one of these teenagers who's looking up at all these heroes, seeing them on TV, and thinking about how glorious their lives are, and spends all her time doodling that kind of stuff. And then meanwhile, she's got her Pakistani parents. She's got her brother who seems to be like a pious Muslim. And then she goes to Jersey City High School, which is, of course, very diverse. And, she's kind of, just living that teen life until one day her Avengers obsession leads her to do some cosplaying of her favorite hero, Captain Marvel, who she's obsessed with. And she needs to glow it up. So what does she do? She finds some bangles that her grandma sent her family, along with some other old clothes from Pakistan. And she dons those for her costume just to, give it a little twist, a little nod to her heritage. And lo and behold, those bangles unlock Green Lantern-like superhero powers for her, which, of course, is going to change the trajectory of her whole life. But at the core of this show, this is still very much a teenage coming-of-age comedy with an extra dash of MCU on top. So I give you Ms. Marvel, our second New Jersey MCU show series, but perhaps
What was the
better
first? What was the first?
WandaVision.
Weren't you listening to the intro?
Oh,
my goodness.
God.
No.
That was, I in and out.
Did you write it down, Mike? Did you write it down?
Ooh.
I had no
No, be taking notes here, Mike.
Take the burn,
here's
pimp.
the difference.
Take the burn.
Here's the difference.
Take
I
your
have
L.
turned having a bad memory into a charming personality trait. With you, it's
Just because you get upset about it.
Nah, Wes, you get point on that one.
All right, so the
Whatever.
spoilers are now incoming hard and fast. Before this show started, I'm going to say it again because I said,
Can we talk about this for a second to our audience?
I think he was trying to cut there.
Yeah,
Brian.
it's fine. Talk about it. Go.
Wes and I are severely trying to cut down on our ums, followed by our likes, because they have definitely been irritating me when I listen back to my own recording. And I know Wes, who edits these episodes, is just livid every time he comes across an because he's a perfectionist. Like MF.
I take them out. I take so many out, and they're still in there.
That's
I
a
can't
really
stop.
bad habit to have for podcast editing. Perfectionism, that is. Like,
And then
you
we
gotta
are
let
both
it go sometimes.
envious of Savon, who just
I've never
has
taken out
zero
an
doesn't lay a word wrong. Like,
I have
So
never
the
taken out
content,
an
the
from
content
Savon.
might
Shout out
be
to Mr. Johnson.
The content might be questionable, but the delivery is impeccable, and that is a fact.
and that is how you cover the wrong with confidence.
Hey, you laughing, but yes, we could talk later on about me and Wes's little encounter. But yes, it's good to be able to use honeyed words to get your way.
Yikes. So we're all feeling a little bit of MCU fatigue rolling into this show. We just had Moon Knight. We've just had a bunch of other series. We've had movies, Doctor Strange. How did these first 2 episodes land coming off the heels of kind of this run of Marvel Cinematic Universe content vomit?
I feel like
How's it going?
before you talk about first reactions to it, you got to talk about like expectations, because I think people had in this show, and I think people largely had a wide variety of expectations for it. So what were y'all after seeing trailers and kind of understanding the concept, maybe knowing the superhero, what were you expecting from this show?
Savon.
I've started to enjoy everything that I consume media-wise when I just don't really go in with expectations. I don't.
Oh
set
my God! All right, next, Brian. I don't want to hear this.
No, this is no. You have to let me do my thing, because this lets me really enjoy stuff a lot more. I don't go in expecting a show to be something that it's not. I don't hype things up or build things up in my mind that can't be realistically met. I think that really does hurt people's ability to enjoy things. And so when I did go into the show, I acknowledged that Ms. Marvel's character and her just ethnicity and culture is going to be something I'm not super familiar with. And her character is ultimately a teenager, so it's going to be Spider-Man-like, where it's going to be a high school coming-of-age story. And both, like, I knew both of those going in. So the only thing I really did expectation-wise was kind of tell myself, regardless of what this is, Savon, you're probably not really in the target audience for this, and that's okay. So that was probably the only thing I really told myself. Otherwise, I kept a very open mind, and that's really let me enjoy this show. Because again, I didn't build it up to be something it was never going to be.
Well, yeah.
People judge a fish by its ability to fly, and I'm like, dude, it was never meant to fly in the first place. Like, I need you to kind of re-examine before you go into this.
I mean, for me, I don't know about you, Brian and Wes, but to me, this looked like it was a show. Like, I actually wasn't planning on watching this show solely because it actually looked like it was like going to be like a children's show and like actually like really take a step towards that direction. I don't think it ended up there, but I was thinking after seeing kind of the marketing for this that like this might be the first one I fully skip. But I'm glad I didn't. But I was just curious, kind of what y'all's thoughts were going into the show.
You mean you thought it was going to be iCarly style?
Yeah. Exactly. Like Nickelodeon.
I don't know the reference of iCarly, but I think I get what you're saying.
What?
Should I know what iCarly is?
No.
Just a
Let's
Disney.
cover that on the next
think
episode.
like
No,
That's So
you're 10
Raven,
years.
sister level of just like sitcom.
Yeah.
Okay, now Savon's speaking my language.
Yeah. There you go. I got you, pimp.
But,
all right.
So if you guys recall, when we were talking about Shang-Chi before it came out, I had a lot of reservations about Shang-Chi just being this like kowtow to China kind of movie. And then I said, I'm actually more excited for Ms. Marvel because she's Pakistani American and it takes place in Jersey City. And so I actually was very much looking forward to this because I do think, to me, you know, as an Asian American, it is way more appealing, right? Something that's actually happening here in the place where I grew up with people I can relate to. So, and I don't think I was wrong. I think anybody that watches this show can agree that it is actually meeting
for sure
that level of insight.
For sure.
I had high expectations. I had low expectations for this one, but more just because I wasn't familiar with Ms. Marvel.
So I'll say this about the first 2 episodes, what I enjoyed, what landed with me. the biggest thing that landed with me is the characters are all very fun to watch interact, and they all feel like real people. They don't. Sometimes the biggest issue I have with not even Marvel, this is movies in general, is that characters talking and interactions don't feel weird. People feel like they're monologuing, or it feels like they're giving a speech when people don't do that in real life. That's not how the real world works. It's not how real dialogue works. And in Miss Marvel, it really feels like it's just a real family having dinner. All these characters feel real. Like we talked about how Kamala Khan's entire bit is that she's like a hyper nerd. She could be a guest on this podcast and fit right in with us in terms of just the nonsense, the arguing. She feels real. You know, even like I hated high school, but just even her high school interactions, they feel real. I was like, bro, I get it. Because that's how I felt in high school a lot of times. Like that's real talk. And so in one element, the characters feel real. And so it's easy to connect and it's fun to watch them just be people. And then the other part, and this was something that, you know, I'm glad that's part of why I just love the idea of representation and diversity, is that there's a lot of cultures I don't know diddly squat about. You know, I love history. I was a poli-sci major. I like to think I'm pretty well versed in just world history. There's still so much I don't know, so many cultures I'm ignorant of. And the show just kind of diving into what that looks like from, you know, the lens of people who are first and second generation immigrants, but they're still American, but they're still from Jersey, like you said, Brian. It's really fun to watch. I get to see a nice slice of life of a culture and world that I otherwise would just not get to see. And so learning more about Islam, learning more about just Muslim traditions and what do these look like and what does it look like on a spectrum for different people. And to me, that's just a really fun thing to watch, because now I find myself afterwards reading more about partition because I knew a little bit about it, but not a lot. And, you know, just from watching Ms. Marvel, I feel like I've become a little bit more worldly, and I still get to enjoy a fun, character-driven story as well.
Mike, what landed for you?
I like the superpowers. I agree with all. I absolutely agree with all that. And I think it's largely driven by. I think the production team is largely representative of the family and the community they're trying to represent. So it's really cool, and it is educational. And they've connected it to the story. I'm not going to reiterate everything Savon said, but I think at least in the first one, I don't know what you would call it on TV, but like the filmmaking is so cool. It's like, it's so refreshing to have a show that doesn't just kind of like blend in with the larger MCU TV show palette. Because I feel like we're slowly getting to a point where they all kind of look the same. They're all lit the same. They're all kind of shot the same. And it's just like, not only is it superhero fatigue, but like with, you know, goldfish brains like us, Wes, I could barely, like, my memories of the shows are like starting to blur. This one could never kind of be confused with anything else because it's got such a distinctive vision, which regardless of, for me, like, I'm at a point with all the Disney stuff like Star Wars and Marvel, like, even if I don't particularly love it, or if it's not like right up my alley, if you at least have like a distinctive vision and a distinctive approach to what you're doing, like, I'm kind of just in for that. And like the first episode was just dripping with style. It seemed like every single moment was very thoughtfully planned out with how it looked, like how it was lit, the special effects in the moment, like the blocking, like it really just felt like a show with a distinctive identity. I don't know if we're talking about Obi-Wan in this episode, but that's like the same thing that I like about Obi-Wan relative to the other Star Wars shows. So it's just been like watching it has been so engaging, and it's just so great to have something that isn't just mindless and MCU slop.
Yeah,
so this is not Mike. Wait, but this is not Mike forgetting about previous shows. Mike just wasn't on those shows where we've talked about the commitment to one style, one theme, one.
Okay. Well, we've talked about this recently.
I'm on the right show then, boys.
We talked about this through the lens of The Boys, through the lens of Doctor Strange, and how those two contrasted a little bit in that.
Contrasted for sure. And I think Obi-Wan relative. I mean, and it's like Obi-Wan relative to Book of Boba Fett, largely. You know, like it's. I think
they know what they want to be. They don't apologize for it. They just go for it.
For sure. And you got to just send it sometimes. Like, fail big, you know? And the show has succeeded. Jordan Firstman, who I love, is terrible in the show, though. The guy that plays the counselor, We can talk about him. He's
I
like
liked
a big
him.
Instagram
Oh, I
guy.
thought
I
he was
love him.
pretty
I
funny.
love him. He's awesome.
Do y'all like his like? He's like an influencer.
Yeah, but
person.
like
I
that's
didn't
what
know
I talked about before with the dialogue. He feels like a real person. Real people talk and engage like that.
Oh,
who have
really?
actual
He kinda
personalities and but outlandish people who talk like that in real life. That's what I liked. It's not.
Yeah, but
just
they wouldn't
some
be
guy.
a school counselor. That guy would be
Shit.
fired.
Nah,
He'd be
bro.
traumatizing too
Nah.
many kids.
All right,
not
that's
really.
fine. That's fine. It's
All right,
just
Brian.
I thought it was kind of a tiny thing anyway.
I mean, I think Mike is totally right, and Savon is totally right. Ms. Marvel not only feels authentic because of the representation, who's in front of the camera and behind the camera and that kind of thing, but also because of the style that they have adopted, and it's just dripping with so much style that it's taking the Scott Pilgrim versus the world thing, but then applying it to an actual teenager in a setting that is more understandable, right? It's a little bit more grounded than Scott Pilgrim.
Than like
It's
28-year-old
an adventure.
Michael
Yeah.
Sarah playing
Yeah.
a high school child.
Yeah,
I was talking about sort of video game coin fights and stuff.
which are amazing.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of like taking that wild aesthetic and then applying it here to a teenage girl who is hopelessly in love with superheroes and then also hopelessly in love with the love interest later, which totally makes sense. That is that's the lens that she is viewing the world. And so they're doing all these amazing things. They're doing the bike ride where they're planning their costumes, or they're planning how they get to
I love that
Avenger
sequence.
Con, and you're seeing all the
Mhm.
animations on the walls around them.
So fun.
When when she meets her love interest Cameron, she bursts onto the scene doing a sing along. I wish it was that Cameron. They also they even did a subtle thing where the bouquet. If you excuse me for a second, if you guys know what bouquet is, it's when like the camera lens goes out of focus and you see the light balls in the background. They usually are in the form of circles, but in this they made them in the shape of hearts. And that just like that kind of subtle detail is amazing. Or when she's upside down,
Yeah, I love
watching
that little shot.
TV on the couch and then it flips around, like just all of that
Yeah.
stuff puts you in the world.
she put the
of
bracelet
this
on.
teenager. What happened when she put the bracelet on?
She fell downwards and she went like it was kind of like the couch thing, but she
Oh,
fell
yeah.
into all the spirits and eyes, and then she came back up, and it's really fun to watch.
Every scene is well thought out in that way, and they're just putting in so much style that it just works so nicely.
Mhm.
And I think overall, my inner Anna is very delighted, and that's Anna, my wife, because she is very much a bubbly teenage girl at heart.
Aw.
And so
Kind of weird
this show
for you,
speaks
bro.
to that.
You made
She-
it weird.
She's inside of me.
Y'all made it weird. It was
What's
wholesome.
happening now?
This was so wholesome. You really
Anyway,
I have to delete this section.
it's just like
Please.
it's just interesting that it's like I love when people just like kind of just go all out with it, right? Like you think about it, it's like, okay, we want to tell this story about this superhero. We really want to focus on kind of the Muslim American part of her identity and what like her in her community means. And then also we're going to make it look crazy as hell with all these trippy, cool, like neon graphics. So it's just like, it didn't have to be that way, but I just love that they just leaned into it like
Mhm.
that.
So what I do think
It's
about
almost
that,
like it's not dissimilar to Everything Everywhere All at Once, kind of, in terms of like just telling this great story and then also just adding on throwing a little spice into the mix per se.
So one thing I do think that works with the editing that does fit into her character, and I think it fits in a way that maybe even Scott Pilgrim and Spider-Man, it doesn't fit in the same way, is that for her, and they kind of did this in the first episode, they kind of showed this, she's a content creator. She's a YouTuber. She actually generates and creates content. She knows how to video edit and actually make, like, she kind of has artistic skills in a lot of ways, right? We saw the fact that she put together that cosplay fit. She's actually really kind of talented in a way that maybe they haven't really emphasized, or maybe they're only hinting at. But to me, that makes all of the artsy style feels more like it's her. Because unlike, even Scott Pilgrim and Peter, they didn't actually doodle and actively do it. It was just like an art style. For her, she's gotten in trouble because she's making caricatures of teachers and stuff. So I don't know. It makes it feel more connected. It makes me feel like I'm really in her mind when I'm seeing all of this fun animations and stuff, because we know she's actually capable of creating it and does with just her hobbies. But to me, it just nails it home and makes her that much more real of a character.
If you like that aspect of this show, I have a show for you. It's called Into the Spider-Verse.
I'm not doing this.
But I do want to draw
You
parallels.
still
there because-
haven't watched that movie? I thought you watched it.
Silence.
Is it really? It's
Looking
gotta
away.
be just. He's just doing it for the bit at this point. I mean, like I
Sweat
imagine
on your
you-
neck. I can see it right now.
What?
I think there's a couple of
anyway.
parallels there to Into the Spider-Verse, and they worked in both of these quote-unquote properties, or these contents, these multimedia, extravaganzas.
Keep going.
The
You could just say things, but whatever.
things. The artwork that you're talking about, the creativity from these main characters shows up in both. The graphics that kind of pop up on screen and kind of overlay in the same way you're talking about Scott Pilgrim, that also happened in Into the Spider-Verse. And there's a different side of the character that shows up. In this case, it's Kamala Khan's Pakistani American heritage, and there's a bunch of different words that get thrown in that aren't English. The captions and the characters, they don't bother to translate them for you. If you know, you know. If you can pick it up in context, you can pick it up in context. And if you don't know, that's okay. And I like that aspect of this and Into the Spider-Verse. They speak Spanish in Into the Spider-Verse, and they don't bother to translate it. You're just left to pick it up
No
if
Way
you can.
Home. And No
And No
Way
Way
Home.
Home.
Let's not forget our Filipino
Oh, yeah, with
American
Ned's family.
folks. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this thing that Marvel is doing, or that filmmakers are doing, which is just to say, hey, this isn't the most important part of the show, but it's important that our characters feel real. And I think what you're talking to in terms of their feeling real partly is that they speak this kind of mishmash of different languages and nobody bats an eye.
That's very New Jersey and New York.
No, but but I agree. I like that. Not everything is for everybody. It's part of it. Also, again, it drives home to why I love representation, because depending on who a target audience is or what references are meant for who, jokes have really fun layers to them. I've talked to Tyler before about how we love that show The Boondocks, and how even lots of people love the show, but for people who aren't black, straight up, there's a lot of jokes that there's so many layers to that it's like, oh, there's no way you could have gotten this joke, and it's okay, you weren't meant to get that joke. And there's a lot of like meta references that if you didn't grow up, you didn't get it, but you can still appreciate the jokes. But I'm glad that that's becoming more and more of a trend, because again, I love being able to be an outside viewer for Ms. Marvel and say, I didn't need to get that, but I can read the context clues to get the gist of it.
So that takes us into our next question, and Savon said this is a bad faith question, and it is on purpose. So I know the answer, but I want us to actually dive into it a little bit anyway. I think this show could potentially turn some viewers off for being too ethnic, too Muslim. Did you guys feel like that's a problem with this show or a weakness of this show moving forward? Savon?
If you want to go watch Top Gun, just go watch Top Gun. Like, you know what I'm saying? No shade to the actual Top Gun movie.
Gay, bro.
Nothing, no shade to the actual Top Gun movie. But, if seeing non-white people or non-Christian people non-American make you uncomfortable, then, that's a you problem. Go figure it out. Go figure out what your issue is.
I just like traditional films, like The Northman, like The Boondock Saints, like Reservoir Dogs. I just think as a country, we've just strayed so far, and it's just social justice.
Yeah. Look, I talk a lot of...
No, I mean, but
I
come
want to
on
see
now,
normal people on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I talk a lot of trash
Soon
about,
enough, every character is going to be a gay brown woman.
No, like, you talk a lot of trash about American stuff and, things that are elements of American culture I don't like. But I think one of the most beautiful things about American culture, regardless of maybe it's not always pretty how you get there, but I think a beautiful thing is the mishmash and cultural mosaic that makes up this country. There's so many just traditions, and, even in Ms. Marvel, you see a blend of, again, we talked about being a Muslim being a spectrum. You see different types of Muslims. You see African Muslims. You see converts. You see how, even for what was his name? For Bruno, it's like, hey, even if you're like a
He did it. He
non-member of
said,
this community.
I win.
Yeah, I was trying to recall.
Dollar in the jar, son. Dollar in the jar.
Yeah, so even for Bruno being there, so representing. See, dang it, my thought. Dag nabbit.
That
Go ahead,
counts
go
for
ahead.
sure. Yeah, everybody else hate
Throw in
kills
some
the
ums.
chat.
Do it.
No,
Feel confident.
I will just defer. I lost my thought.
All right,
Brian.
here's the thing.
Okay.
No, go ahead. It's just the neckbeard stuff. So I'm sure, Brian, you have something smart to say, and then I'll talk about my favorite people.
I mean, so Savon touched upon this, talking about the tapestry of America. There's also what I like about this
Thank
show
you.
is that there's tapestry of the Muslim community, which he also touched on, right? That scene where we go to the Eid celebration, which I think is actually
It was so fun.
how some of these things take place. I haven't been to an Eid celebration, but I know that they are very much a Christmas, New Year's kind of equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
And we see all the different factions in a really fun Mean Girls kind of
The
way.
Illuminati.
The Illuminantes,
The Illuminati, shout out.
Yeah.
the
goated.
mosque bros. There's bros
The
in
mosque
every
bros.
culture. I know mosque bros. Like they are all over New York City. And then you got the pious boys, right? Which might be a more common perception of how
Yeah.
neckbeards are looking at these Muslims, right? And then you get the converse, as you mentioned, the non-South Asian Muslims who are there, and then you get the kid in the bell tower who's trying to take a selfie of himself, trying to look cool at the top of the mosque or whatever. So
And he's the one that stole
He's the
Nakia's
shoe
shoes.
thief, huh? Yeah, was he the shoe thief? Yeah.
I
Yeah,
did
he was
not
the shoe
connect
thief.
that. He's the shoe thief. Right. There's a shoe thief at the
Wait,
masjid.
in the mosque.
Who
yeah.
stole the shoes?
Yes.
The kid who fell out the tower.
Oh, so he got his just desserts falling on that car.
I mean, it might be a little extreme.
is that disproportional?
but might be a little bit. But he only got like a bad ankle hurt, so I guess
Yeah.
that's better than death. So
Yeah.
So I like that they're taking the show into all these places, and then of course you have the character of Nakia, who I think adds another wonderful texture and level of nuance. Right, she talks about wearing hijab and what it means for her to find an identity for herself that she can feel confident about, while she's constantly getting stigmatized from people of all walks of life or from all aspects of her own life. Right. But yet she wants to change the culture in their local masjid. She wants to elevate the status of the women in their masjid, in their community. And I'm sure that's going to play out interestingly throughout the series. And I know that is actually a concern in the comics, as I've read. And so that's really interesting. And then the FBI agent also, or not the FBI agent, but I think, what are they called?
The
Department of Damage
Control. Yes, Department of Damage Control.
Which is really odd.
They're
But whatever,
they're inspired.
Ezra Miller needs to hire them.
He makes
Jesus
an offhand
Christ.
comment about how we know that the FBI is already surveilling the mosques.
Oh,
So
yeah.
be
Yeah.
respectful.
It-
So I think even just acknowledging that in a Disney show that there is systematic racism very much targeting the Muslim American community is very fascinating, and I'm here for it. I want them to explore this more. I know the comics definitely do, and I think the show is setting us up for more of those issues to be interrogated.
Yeah, they're not
Mike, do you have
whitewashing
anything?
real conflict. They're not whitewashing history.
Yeah.
Like even Winter Soldier and Falcon was good about like really referencing the OG Captain America and the experiments and stuff. There's issues with a lot of their newer shows, but they're doing a better job of when we're telling a story that's from a lens of people within a certain community. We're not gonna just overlook major historical events just because they make X group or country not look good. It's like, hey, this is what happened. Straight up, take it how you want.
Mike?
I don't really have anything to add in terms of,
Okay,
so I
let's
think
move on.
your original question was like, you were asking us to explain why the neckbeards are wrong. And,
Pretty much,
you
yeah.
know. I don't think it has to do with the quality of the representation or how well they're crafting a story. For those people, it's just the fact that it's there at all is an issue. But hearing y'all talk, has kind of made me realize I think like those days might be, and I'll explain what I mean in a second, but I think like times have changed a little bit. I was listening to something the other day, and it's like we're in a period where kind of like cultural trends are changing faster than they ever have. So I think kind of the neckbeard like uprising that actually makes its way into like the kind of mainstream opinion of things, I don't think that's a thing anymore in the kind of the post-Trump world. So like they knew what they were doing. Like, let's not forget how controversial Captain Marvel was just for being a woman character, right? So it's like that part of the internet got amplified and then everybody's talking about it, right? It happened again with The Last of Us. Like, that game came out, like, there was this giant uproar solely because of representation, not the quality of the character, the quality of the story, solely because there was a trans character. That got brought into the mainstream consciousness, right? Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's having opinions based on that conversation. I don't think that, and it doesn't seem the same way. Like, obviously, there have been, like, what do they call it? Brigade. What are they, when they all vote something down? Or
Brigade.
Yeah, there've been big brigades with stuff. No, but like even with this show, I think they've tried, but I just don't think like that isolated. I don't think people take them seriously enough anymore for any of those opinions to really even like kind of break the surface in terms of what most people are thinking. I don't, Savon. I mean, you can make, but like I think we see so much of these people just being nuts now, like all over the news is just like how crazy and ridiculous like some of this alt-right stuff is, especially now that we're talking about like, you know, January 6th and yada, yada, yada. I just don't think people like are going to hear them and actually really pay them any mind, which is how it should be. Like they should kind of return back to under the rock. And I think in terms of like entertainment, I think we are slowly getting there, and I think a lot of it is driven by just kind of like we're slowly kind of, I think, untentacling ourselves from that kind of thinking. Conspiracy might be, I think a lot of that stuff was pushed on social media by Russians as like a form of divisiveness in that whole campaign.
I mean, that's documented.
Yeah, so and I think it's logical, and this is just a conspiracy, but it's logical to think that they were trying to stoke division in the country via like that kind of like Captain Marvel canceling, like stoking the right with that. But now Russia's obviously a little preoccupied getting clapped up in Ukraine, so maybe they don't have as much resources. So maybe that's what it is. Anyway, that's a rant. I think the neckbeards are slowly going to be not as much of a factor, which is great. So
are they going to shave their necks?
No, they're always going to be there. It's just they're not going to get any type of attention, which is exactly how it should be. We should never have had the conversation about The Last of Us that we did. It shouldn't have been so much news. Like people that aren't neckbeards that don't have a PlayStation will come and be like, oh, well, isn't there like so many like trans characters in the game? And be like, no, it's just like that shit gets cycled through the news cycle and, you know, telephone from year to year. So I just think that stuff is starting to be pushed to the side, and I think like this show just gets to exist in its own right, and it doesn't have to be like Captain Marvel where it's like fighting against the brigading and all that, like right, because that stuff just ends up on Fox News now. Anyway, I'm getting very political on my first show back, so I'll stop.
I hope you're right. I don't know that that's right, but I hope you're right. I do think this one hasn't had as much of that social media uproar about its existence and its representation of Muslim Americans as the primary drivers of the show. So that's good. That's a positive step. I'm wondering if the less extreme, right, just the more moderate person on the street, whether they're in college, whether they're working, even young people who's, you know, the target demographic is younger for Marvel and for these shows, are they just not going to embrace this as much because of the representation that is here? It's not going to speak to them in the same way that Iron Man spoke to them.
Yeah.
I think it's just a question, right? We don't know yet.
Sure. And I'm not saying there isn't Islamophobia. In fact, data shows like, you know, stuff like, you know, that is increasing.
I hope not, Mike. It definitely exists.
No. Yeah, no, but it's not my place to speak on that. But what I can say from my experience is hearing kind of the conversations in that space, I don't think those type of opinions and voices carry as much weight as they did 2-3 years ago.
Let's hope. So
Savon disagrees.
Yeah. I think that's.
I hope this is just
I'm
hope.
maybe more
I
on
have
the
a- I have
Savon
a
side, but
I don't know. Don't you think? Like,
Wes
what
lives
if this
next
show
door to
came
a
out?
Nazi and a alt-right
I'm
dude
not
shot up a
saying
bunch of
it's
black
not
folk
there,
at a
but
thing.
I know. I'm not saying they're not there. I'm not saying it's improving at all.
Yeah.
But I think, and when we talk about opinions of shows and stuff like that and games, I don't think the kind of like alt-right shit. Like, I don't think it's people really pay heed to those opinions anymore. Maybe they're definitely still there. In fact, maybe those opinions on their own are growing, but I think when people hear them now, we're more kind of accustomed to be like, oh, you sound like an idiot, I'm just gonna watch this show.
gotcha.
Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe
Well,
it's not my
let's-
place to even have a thought like that.
Yeah, let's wrap this up. Are there any final thoughts we have before we explore the limits of Kamala Khan's hard light? I think that's a really weird name for her ability. And find out about the trail of stars that her grandmother followed to find her great grandfather. And we're introduced to this mysterious lady in the back of the car. There's lots of things coming. What are we final thoughts before we wrap up the show? Savon, where are you at?
Small detail, when the girl who Kamala saved at the Avenger Con was taken in by Zimmer, was taken in by damage control. Little small detail. I don't know if y'all caught this. In the episode 1, they reference how her and Kamala's families used to be friends, so they're actually cool with each other, right? So they kind of showed the girl, Zimmer, being a little uncomfortable when they started mentioning Islam, all that type of stuff in mosque. So I actually think she recognizes that even though she doesn't know who the person who saved her was, she recognizes, oh, Kamala could be in danger because she actually already has a little bit of insight into like the Muslim community because she used to be tight with Kamala. I don't know where they're going to take that, but I do think that's going to be that was a small and I think going to be a huge plot point. I think Zimmer's going to be a bigger player than we realize. But also, I'm just loving damage control as an antagonist because they popped up in Spider-Man as well. And they're just so, it's just, they're just a fun recurring antagonist to have who you don't have to watch the others to know it either. Though. They're fun.
They're
Yeah,
just
people have
creepy
mentioned
cops.
That the drones that they're using look like
Those
the
Stark-
ones from
they
Far
were.
From Home.
Yeah, those were 100% the Stark Tech drones. The government repurposed them, and I guess. Which again, I'm loving that they're taking those little hints of they're doing little things of like, hey, you don't have to watch the MCU to know this, but hey, if you do watch it, you can. These are little bits that kind of builds the world. But I love those Mysterio drones still being in play.
One other thing that we haven't talked about yet is that Ms. Marvel in the comics has a very different set of abilities than she does in the show. In the comics, she is more like Mr. Fantastic and can stretch her body, enlarge it, shrink it, do all sorts of crazy stuff like that. And she's actually an Inhuman in the comics. Her powers get awakened by Terrigen Mist, which I read Marvel, the publisher, was pushing for because they didn't have the rights to the X-Men movies anymore and couldn't profit off of it. So they were really pushing hard in Humans.
And the Humans flopped
and then
super hard.
They created Ms. Marvel as part of that. And, they were trying to build up this offset of mutant type characters because they couldn't profit off of the actual mutant characters in their roster. So Ms. Marvel is kind of an outgrowth of that in the comics. But on the show, they disregard Terrigen Mist. At least so far they have. The Inhumans TV show flopped, so I think they're moving away from that. They've introduced the Bangles, which awaken some power inside of her. And she does this hard light ability where she's casting these light crystals in any form that she can think of. And so one thing I'm really hopeful of is that they lean into her ability to be creative and imaginative, and that they go really wild places with that hard light. That because I thought that they were just going to do similar Mr. Fantastic powers, but in hard light form, like an extending arm, like when she saved the girl at Avenger Con, right? But now they're sort of showing her creating her own platforms and doing some like weird Super Mario type deal, jumping around rooftops, which I think is pretty cool. Maybe she'll come up with something really wild and interesting, like her own hard light helicopter. Who knows? Like, I really hope the show takes us there and gives us kind of a wonderful, absurd, surreal version of these abilities because they're wielded by a teenage girl who probably is not boxed in like an average protagonist would be. She actually
She's a creative.
She's a creative, and she's and she has a Pakistani Muslim background, and so I think that also will take her away from the mainstream thinking and kind of produce some interesting wild stuff with her abilities, and so I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see her team up with Kate Bishop. They exist in kind of the same time period.
I'm sure you're going to get that.
The same area. They both idolize different Avengers. For Kate Bishop, it was Hawkeye. For Kamala Khan, it's Captain Marvel. They would just seem like they would just fangirl out. And maybe that would be too much fangirl, but I would kind of like to see
As long
that.
as it makes sense and it's a good show, I'm cool with it, but I don't want to just force it.
All right, last thoughts, Savon. Take us out.
It's going to be forced, so prepare yourself.
To Brian's point, Inhumans exist in a really weird middle place, especially with how Inhumans flopped. I was kind of neutral about where they deal with their power set differences, but you know what? Generally, when Marvel has deviated from the comic origins, I've, for the most part, been happy with them doing reimagining. Like, their reimagining of Thanos is better than his comic character, in my opinion, by a long shot. So when they deviate, I tend to like what they do. So I'm going to just trust their judgment of, hey, we didn't think the stretchy powers was going to work out. Wherever they go with that and the bangle and the spirits with the thing we saw in her great-grandmother, I think that's going to be interesting to see either way. Because there's going to be a partition story that happens at some point when we learn what happened with the great-grandma. That in itself, there's no not engaging version of that as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Well, that'll end our show on Ms. Marvel. That's first 2 episodes. We'll come back. We'll circle back, as they say in the corporate world, at the end of the show and see where this show took us, how the Garden State held up, and whether we actually get into Manhattan. I don't think we're going to go there. I don't think she's going to end up in Manhattan. But anyways.
I think we need more Jersey on this show.
Yeah.
More Jersey.
Yeah, Jersey needs to be like another character.
I don't
Is
know
Zach
if that's
Braff
ever the
gonna make an
answer,
appearance?
I mean, it looks like a pretty good representation of the city. I'm looking around. I'm like, I've never been to Jersey, but this looks like not other cities I've seen on TV.
It's probably
turns out
Canada.
it's like
They
shot in
definitely did not film in
Atlanta
Jersey
or
City.
something.
Oh, okay. Well, they did a
It's a
good job.
soundstage.
It's a soundstage. All right, at confidently_pod. Hit us up on Instagram. We'll see you next week.
Incredible!